And the U.S. is now reassessing where our troops are sent around the world. General Kenneth McKenzie, the top U.S. general in the Middle East, just completed a tour of the region where many countries are still asking for American military assistance to deter Iran. But this comes as U.S. troops could be taken out of the region and moved toward new threats in Asia. ABC senior Pentagon reporter Luis Martinez joins us now from the Pentagon with more on this. Luis, thanks so much for doing this. I know you just returned from this week-long trip with General McKenzie. So what's the significance of this reassessment and why now?
Well, Diane, this is something that the Biden administration is undertaking to try to figure out globally where it makes sense for U.S. troops to be. We've heard that the focus has been on Russia and China. That's the national defense strategy that they inherited from the Trump administration. This is something that they want to continue in the future as well. So for the last 20 years, we've had so many troops in the Middle East region that it's been a suck and a drain on resources for the rest of the military. Now they're trying to redetermine, does it make sense to go down in terms of first levels in the Middle East and rejigger them and move them towards the Far East in terms of the Indo-Pacific region, as they call it here at the Pentagon. So one of the main purposes of General McKenzie's trip here was to reassure America's allies in the Middle East that despite whether there is any kind of rejiggering in forces, that the main priority will still be the Middle East for the United States and that they will have their back.
And Louis, you interviewed General McKenzie again in Saudi Arabia just after he'd met with Saudi officials to discuss Iran. So what's the latest on that relationship between Iran and the Saudis? And do you get the sense that the presence of American troops has deterred Iran in any way?
General McKenzie was pretty clear that the presence of American troops inside of Saudi Arabia has deterred what he calls state versus state aggression from Iran. This is something that is very keen for Saudi officials because for the last year or so, the last 2 years, they have been receiving lots of missile attacks from the southern state of Yemen. Inside Yemen, as we remember, you've got these Houthi rebels that are in charge. They are backed by Iran. They receive missiles from Iran, and they have been launching them at Saudi Arabia in an effort to try to get the Saudi troops that are inside of Yemen fighting against them to withdraw. And so General McKenzie was again reassuring them that their capabilities, and because, as he said, they've been under attack, and this is what he had to say about it.
You know, it's hard to measure deterrence until you've lost it. But I would tell you that I believe our posture in the theater has prevented a state-on-state attack from Iran. It has not prevented proxy attacks from Iran, either from Yemen into Saudi Arabia or, as we have seen in Iraq against our forces there. But it has prevented a large state-on-state attack by Iran. It's hard to characterize attribution for each individual attack, but it is very easy to know where the equipment came from. It is very easy to know where the training came from. It is very easy to know where the strategic direction came from, and that all came from Iran.
So, Diane, what he's talking about is Iran's malign activity in the region. It's not just limited to inside of Yemen. We're talking about the backing of Iranian-backed Shiite militias inside of Syria, inside of Iraq, where they have launched attacks against U.S. facilities such as the U.S. Embassy or even military bases. So this is not just limited to inside Yemen. This is a whole regional problem for Iran in terms that the United States wants to maintain, as you heard him at the top, deterrence against Iran, and he never knows until how that deterrence is working until it goes away, as you heard him say. Diane?
And I know you also visited Syria with General McKenzie. What was his take on why U.S. troops are still there, and what are some of his concerns having to do with that region?
There are multiple reasons why the United States is still inside Syria. One of the main reason, as he told us in an interview, is to try to prevent ISIS from reforming. There are concerns that ISIS, they've been defeated on the battlefield, but they can come back together. They can they want to reassert themselves in that caliphate that we heard them brag about so often for the years that they were in control inside Iraq and Syria. But there's also concern about whether you might be seeing some kind of incubators for extremism in the future. In particular, this massive camp called Al-Hol. There are about 70,000 refugees in there. The majority of them are the children and the wives of ISIS fighters. There are concerns that maybe this next generation of extremists or Islamic extremists may be fomented right there inside that camp. And here's what he had to say about it. We've always heard that Syria is a complex battlefield in the eastern part of the country. Can you explain to us how that is with the Russians, with the Assad regime, with ISIS, the whole section?
Well, sure. There are a lot of nations and a lot of interests that collide here in Syria. And northeastern Syria is a perfect example of one of those. The one thing I would tell you is our interest in Syria is getting after the final defeat of Daesh and preventing ISIS in any form from ever being able to threaten the United States. That's the reason we're here, and that's the reason that we maintain this network and work with our SDF partners up and down the Euphrates River Valley.
One of the things that General McKenzie is really focused on is making sure that the extremism angle inside that Al-Hol prison camp, the detention camp, doesn't expand further. Now, you heard him talk there about how complex of a mission it is inside of Syria. It's not just the ISIS. You also have the presence of Russian troops who are there backing the Assad regime. You've got the Turks in the north. They have their own interests. So it's a very complex battlefield. And how does this all tie into the rejiggering of troops worldwide? Well, he's concerned that if you need to maintain that presence inside of eastern Syria. But ultimately, the decision is not going to be up to him. It's going to be something that the Pentagon's going to decide. And then beyond that, President Biden will have to decide whether the presence of U.S. troops inside Syria is going to have to continue as the focus shifts to Russia and China. Diane?
All right, Louis Martinez, thanks for that.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.